Good afternoon, and welcome to Take Action News with David Shuster. This is executive producer Daniel Marins in the host chair once again today. But we do have David Shuster joining us on the line, and this is the show where we take you through the week's events and tell you how you can take action to influence outcomes. And this week had many events. David Shuster, what did you think of the rollout of the president's budget this week? Well, the president finally rolled out his budget resolution, which is his ideal plan for the nation's spending priorities this year. Traditionally, the budget resolution is seen as an ideal vision of what the president would want and of what Congress will want on the opposite side when they propose their budget. And then from there, the details become very, very different. But of course, in this case, as had been announced that last week, and as we had discussed on this show before, the president did announce that his budget would propose right up front many sacrifices that some folks are saying he should have saved for later, including the Chain Consumer Price Index that would switch many government benefits, but the largest of which would be Social Security, to grow based on a different measure of inflation called the Chain Consumer Price Index. Now, of course, at this point, whenever we discuss issues related to Social Security, I always disclose that I am the policy director of Social Security Works during the week. What exactly is the Chain Consumer Price Index? Some people are wondering that. Well, in order to prevent Social Security benefits from eroding over time due to inflation, the government provides an adjustment every year. That means they add a certain amount in nominal dollars to make sure that the real value dollar of that benefit remains the same, that the purchasing power of that benefit remains the same. And so, currently, we use a consumer price index for the overall population, including for Social Security. And what the Chain Consumer Price Index would essentially say, what the Chain Consumer Price Index measures, is that instead of saying when the price of products goes up, this certain basket of goods, that counts as price inflation. That counts as general amounts of inflation on a general basket of goods. What the Chain Consumer Price Index essentially says is, instead of that, we will measure the effects of people switching to cheaper products as prices go up. So if the price of steak goes up, then the logic is people will buy a proportionately larger amount of chicken to switch to a cheaper priced product. Again, it's important to note this is not filet mignon versus a cheap steak. This is literally between product groups. So it would be between beef and chicken. Again, that is a classic example that is used. So that's essentially logic. And as a result, the Chain Consumer Price Index is stingier and goes up at a slower rate. Because when you measure those effects of price substitution, of higher level price substitution between product groups, then prices go up at a slower rate. They don't go up as fast. And I would say, regardless of whether you think that's more accurate or not, that does reduce your purchasing power. It does. Because even if you're switching to chicken from meat, you're still buying something less expensive. Your purchasing power is therefore less. And the government is saying that they know how to measure that appropriately. Now, switch the issue of how Chain Consumer Price Index applies to Social Security and to veterans' benefits for that matter. Seniors, we know, pay 3 times more out of pocket for their health care costs. 3 times more than the average population. And that often amounts to nearly 20% of their total income and expenses. 20%. Sometimes even more than that. And that's with Medicare. So if your basket of goods, to begin with, includes a whole lot more medical treatments, out-of-pocket healthcare costs, if it includes also things like higher heating bills in the winter because you're old, if it includes things like rent when you are no longer, in some cases, seniors are believed to be spending more on rent as well, then how do you substitute those products that easily? That's the first issue. Any chained index with regard to the expenses facing seniors is not something that seniors can easily substitute. How do you substitute coronary bypass for a hernia? You don't. You don't. That's the answer. And so, of course, the dollar value of those benefits as a result of the Chain Consumer Price Index would decrease and decrease over time and allow them to be eroded by inflation based on the current measure that we know. And that means that after that a senior claiming Social Security benefits at age 65 would see their benefits cut by $658 a year at age 75, and of course something like $1,000 at age 85 in many cases when they are most vulnerable.